Why is your consulting business stuck at the same revenue? If your revenue has been flat for a year or two, I want to tell you something up front. It's almost never a reflection of your expertise. It's not the quality of your work either. It's an architectural failure, and it's predictable. I've watched hundreds of businesses go through this, and here's what I've learned. A plateau is the natural ceiling of a founder led model that has reached its structural limit. It isn't that you aren't working hard enough. It's that your business architecture was never designed to scale past your personal capacity. So let me reflect a few symptoms back to you, and you can diagnose yourself. The first one is spinning plates. You're keeping the business upright through sheer force of will. You oscillate between delivery and sales, and there's no systematic flow to any of it. The second is strategic growth stalling. The big moves, things like positioning and system building and long term expansion, those get sacrificed every single time for the urgent client email. And the third is the founder bottleneck. You've become the single point of failure. Your revenue is capped at exactly the point where your calendar is full. Here's the conflict underneath all three. It's structural. Delivery and business development are competing for the same hours. That's what creates the feast or famine cycle. Revenue swings between overloaded and empty. And because you're the only source of new work, growth stalls every time delivery wins. You're trapped in a model where you have to stop growing to start serving and stop serving to start growing. So, working harder inside that architecture isn't a sign of commitment. It's a strategic error, and it leads to exhaustion. Now, let's talk about why working harder doesn't fix this. I call it the brute force hustle trap, and it's a diminishing returns strategy. A lot of consultants believe that one more networking event will break the ceiling, or a January resolution to finally get active on LinkedIn. But sporadic effort without a system is what I call pushing a rope. You expend an exhausting amount of energy and get zero forward movement because there's no tension in the system. When business development becomes a leftover hour activity, you're operating in what I call the rescue mission model of growth. You only focus on the pipeline when it's already empty and revenue is at risk. That forces you into a reactive state. You end up only solving bleeding neck problems for prospects in the fast lane. And look, those deals close quickly. That's true, but if you rely on them, your business is built on fortunate timing. You're hoping the right lead shows up at exactly the moment they're desperate and you happen to be free. To get out of that trap, you have to shift your internal state from solicitor to diagnostician. Here's the difference. Beggar energy asks for the business. Doctor energy diagnoses the problem. Beggar energy shows up as more pitches, sharper closes, more hustle. You're trying to convince someone to buy. Doctor energy is the authority of someone who diagnoses. You're giving buyers a structured way to see and understand the real problem through your expertise well before a proposal is on the table. That shift from beggar to doctor is what changes the nature of the conversation, and it's the only way out of the hustle trap. You move from personality dependent hustle to scalable infrastructure. So let's get into how you actually do that. To cross the valley of death, which is the stall that hits when delivery consumes the hours business development requires, you have to install a system that attracts opportunities while you're busy delivering. There are two parts to this. The first is the ladder framework and the wedge. The ladder framework is the method for separating roles inside the business so that growth doesn't rest entirely on your shoulders, and that requires a disciplined separation of time. Think about it in two columns. Maker time is delivery. It's working in the business. You're reacting to client needs. And the trap there is year-long delivery cycles that swallow everything. Manager time is building the business. It's working on the business. It's designing the opportunity engine. And the solution that lives in that column is installing the wedge. Now, the wedge is your low risk first step. Often that's a 30-day structured assessment or diagnostic. It lets a client start working with you without a long, complex sales cycle. And it moves you from maker to manager because it standardizes the entry point. You're not bogged down in custom delivery before you've even diagnosed the full problem. So here's the command: protect your manager hours as if they were your most prestigious client engagement. The second part is the opportunity engine itself. The opportunity engine is the deliberate system that replaces your personal presence in the market. It moves you from a push model where you're chasing to a pull model where you're attracting. There are 5 stages. First, they discover your expertise. Second, they understand the specific problem you solve. Third, they experience how you think before they ever hire you. Fourth, trust builds before the first meeting happens. And fifth, they enter a diagnostic conversation because they're ready. Let me give you a real example of Jennifer founded an HR consulting business, and she was the classic founder as engine, trapped in a feast or famine cycle with growth capped strictly by her personal calendar. She relied on fortunate timing and a lot of high effort networking. She broke the cycle by removing herself as the engine and installing an intentional opportunity engine. She clarified her wedge, a structured diagnostic that let her demonstrate doctor energy immediately without committing to a massive delivery project upfront. Here's what happened. Her revenue went from $1 million to $2 million in 18 months. And then, once the infrastructure was in place and the founder bottleneck was gone, the business doubled again to 4 million. Jennifer's success wasn't the result of working harder, it was the result of moving from fortunate timing to intentional infrastructure. Let me answer a few questions I get all the time. The first one, I'm at capacity, so how do I find time for this? You don't find time, you block it. Use the ladder framework to implement protected half days where client delivery is strictly forbidden. That's the only way to build the infrastructure that eventually buys your time back. Second question, should I hire a salesperson to fix my revenue plateau? No, hiring a salesperson to fix a missing system is a hiring trap. If you don't have an opportunity engine, you're just paying someone else to push a rope. A salesperson can't fix a structural architecture problem. They can only accelerate a system that already exists. Third, my revenue has been flat for 2 years. Isn't that stability? In boutique consulting, flat is rarely stable. It's usually the calm part of the feast or famine cycle. It tells you that you've exhausted your local market or your current network. And without a shift to a pull model, flat revenue is often a precursor to decline. Last one, how long does this transition take? The typical timeline for a major inflection point is 18 months, but the first signal shows up much sooner than that. You'll start having diagnostic conversations where the prospect is already pre-sold on your expertise before the meeting even starts. So let me leave you with this. Stagnation is a diagnostic signal. It's telling you that your current architecture has failed. To break the ceiling, you have to stop being the engine and start building one. Move from beggar to doctor. Protect your manager time and install an opportunity engine that keeps working even when you're busy delivering.